Hytale's real beginning was never Zone 1 for years. Most players believed Hytale would begin the same way many sandbox games do, in Orbis Zone 1, surrounded by calm landscapes, open fields, and the promise of a fresh start. But that idea is officially gone. Hytale has confirmed that we will not start the game in Zone 1 of Orbis, and the exploration mode available from day one has a name that quietly changes everything: Echoes of Orbis. That isn't just a stylistic choice, because echoes don't belong to the present. They belong to what's already past. And once you understand that, it becomes clear that Hytale isn't introducing us to a peaceful world at the beginning of its story. It's dropping us into the aftermath. This is not the Orbis people expected. When we enter Hytale for the first time, we won't be greeted by green plains, beginner villages, or quiet starter camps. Everything points to an opening that feels far stranger, heavier, more mysterious, and deeply tied to the game's lore. Instead of familiarity, the world appears fractured from the very first moment. Reports and analysis suggest that we may spawn near, or even inside, that God's temple, a structure that doesn't feel grounded in Orbis at all. It appears to float somewhere beyond the normal world, held together by a form of void-like magic. This immediately tells us something important. Hytale isn't easing players into its story, it's confronting them with it, and that temple doesn't seem like a random location. GA's temple was never meant to be optional according to multiple interviews, deep analysis, and older developer statements, including comments made by Noxy, a former Hytale developer. GA's temple may serve a very specific purpose, not just narratively, but mechanically. All signs suggest that this location functions as the game's true tutorial. This is where players would learn how to control their avatar, understand the core systems, and most importantly, uncover what actually happened to Orbis. Years ago, Noxy explained that the team wanted Hytale to begin with a tutorial inspired by The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, a tutorial that teaches through environment and discovery rather than instructions. On top of that, Simon has repeatedly stated that everything shown in Hytale's trailers is meant to be playable, not symbolic, not cinematic, fully real within the game. And Simon has also made it clear that Giao is the central figure of Hytale's story, so starting in her temple doesn't just make sense. It almost feels inevitable. The Garden of Elements is the key. Inside God's temple lies one of the most important locations in Hytale's lore, the Garden of Elements. This isn't just a sacred place, it's the foundation of life in Orbis itself. The garden represents the 5 elemental essences that sustain the world: fire, electricity, water, air, earth. Together, they form the balance that keeps Orbis alive. But when we encounter this place, that balance is already broken. At the center of the garden stands a stone golem, once a guardian of the temple. But something clearly went wrong. The golem has been struck by a corrupted sword, and both it and the garden appear altered, twisted, and possibly influenced by the void. This doesn't feel like the beginning of corruption, it feels like the result of it. And the most unsettling part is that this scene isn't new to us. We've already seen this and misunderstood it. In the official Hytale trailer, we see ourselves inside the Garden of Elements, helping Quiebex during a mission called Defeat the Golem. At first glance, it looks like a simple early game challenge, but the more you analyze it, the more it feels like something else entirely. Defeating the Golem doesn't restore the garden, it doesn't undo the corruption, it simply removes what remains of its protection, which suggests that this mission isn't the conclusion of a conflict. It's one of the first steps in dealing with something that began long before the player ever arrived. That realization leads directly to a much larger theory: the conflict that shaped Orbis. Many interpretations point toward the idea that Orbis was attacked by Barine before the events of the game. Reports and speculation suggest that this attack led to a direct confrontation between Barine and Ga, the goddess of Orbis. But this clash doesn't appear to have ended with a clear winner. There's no sign of restoration, no evidence of victory. Instead, we see a world that survived, but only barely. It feels like a desperate attempt to prevent total destruction caused by the void. And if Ga did succeed in stopping complete corruption, it likely came at an enormous cost. Gay may have sacrificed herself. One of the strongest theories is that Gay sacrificed herself to protect Orbis. Rather than being overtaken by corruption, she appears trapped, sealed, or crystallized within her own temple to hold the void at bay for as long as possible. This interpretation fits remarkably well with what we see. Her temple is directly connected to the Garden of Elements, the very core that sustains life in Orbis. If that core collapsed, the entire world would fall with it. The current state of the garden, the corrupted golem, and the spreading influence of the void all suggest that the conflict reached the heart of the world itself. What we're witnessing isn't the beginning of the problem, it's the consequence of something that already happened. The sword was never meant for Gay in multiple concept arts. Gay appears in a crystallized state, not fully corrupted, but restrained, as if bound by a curse rather than consumed by it, and beside her, there is a sword. But the sword doesn't look aggressive. It doesn't look like a weapon used against her. It looks placed, intentional, almost as if it were waiting for someone who would arrive later, for the player. And the more you analyze these details, the clearer it becomes that Hytale's story revolves around this central conflict between Ga, Baron, and the Void. Even the game's logo seems to echo this idea. The logo tells the same story. Hidden within the letter H of the Hytale logo are two opposing figures. One appears to represent Ga, still protecting Orbis. The other resembles Baron, attempting to corrupt or destroy it. Orbis itself is trapped between them. them. Alongside it sits a symbol representing contained evil. This imagery reinforces the idea that Ga isn't part of the corruption. She's the reason it hasn't consumed everything. Why the player arrives now. That's why it makes sense for our character to appear at this exact point in the world, not to prevent the catastrophe, because that already happened, but because Orbis is still resisting, and Ga can no longer hold the balance alone. It feels as though the player has been awakened, you're summoned, to begin breaking the curse from within, piece by piece, and it's no coincidence that the first major playable arc is called Breaking Curses. That appears to be our true purpose. Echoes of Orbis explains everything. The name Echoes of Orbis suggests that we aren't playing in Orbis's final form. We're exploring a past version, an incomplete version, a half-remembered world. It feels like we're walking through the remains of what Orbis once was, or what survived after the Great Conflict. This matches the official description perfectly. A world filled with ruins, corruption, and fragments of a story that already happened. The so-called memory windows seen in concept art would allow players to access key moments from the past, filling in the gaps of what truly occurred. The future hasn't been written yet. Interestingly, the description also mentions fragments of what the future could become. Everything we've seen so far belongs to World Generation 1. World Generation 2, which hasn't been revealed, may represent a future that doesn't fully exist yet. A future that could arrive through expansions, major updates, and ongoing content. Final thoughts, Echoes of Orbis may not just be Hytale's playable beginning. It may be one of the smartest ways to merge lore with long-term game development. We explore a world anchored in the past, while slowly being shown the Orbis that has yet to come. And if you want to see the portals, dungeons, and content available at launch, subscribe.